The Devil's Hide. That's what they called the place. As far back as I can remember, that was the name. It echoed in my brain as I rode, the cold wind stinging my eyes and face, the cold wind stinging my lungs like thousands of tiny little knives as I rode. My horse was getting tired, and so was I, as we cut through the dark of the early morning hours. I'd been riding hard most of the night. My mantra was the Devil's Hide. I clung to the thought to keep my sanity within the pain. Up there, the moon was full. Down here, darkness ruled. It was dangerously dark. Evil, hungry things lurked in the dark, in the cold of night. The night was slowly, very slowly turning to day. The violet of the sky was just beginning to break the darkness. I could feel the horse begin to tire beneath me, but I pushed her on. I knew there were killers in the darkness. They used the dark of night to hunt. I could hear their howls off in the dark, the sound I didn't want to hear, howling at the moon in the darkness of the trees. The trees were so much higher than they were meant to be. In the wooded ravines on a mountainside, I could see yellow eyes flash. I could feel the trees have eyes. I knew I was not alone. We were not alone. I pushed the mare on, riding as hard as she could through the darkness. I used to know this road so well, many a time I was here before, but suddenly I realized that we were lost. I slowed the horse to a stop. She huffed and breathed heavily, and I jerked her this way and that. I could have sworn I knew the way. I felt sweat beads trickle down my forehead, down my lower back. I was exhausted. But the longer we stood there, the eyes that I saw flashing in the trees, eyes I didn't want to see, came closer, became brighter, yellow, menacing. I should have turned around. I should have made my horse run for dear life. So much louder the howling became as they got closer and closer. It was chilling my bones. One wolf grew into a dozen, and here we were, alone. Yellow eyes, they were everywhere. Yellow eyes, bared teeth, heads hanging low, ready for the pounce, growling, panting, focusing on my mare's haunches, my legs, flexing paws, waiting for the signal, yellow eyes as I prepared to die. And suddenly, in a halo of light that shone over the edge of a large boulder, she climbed into sight. The wolves that surrounded me on my horse cowered and whined in fear. Their yellow eyes squinted in the bright light. They all began one by one to run off into the darkness of the trees. I looked over at the creature who shone the brilliant white light. It was the largest white wolf with the biggest blue eyes that I had ever seen. She stood peacefully upon the rock and stared into my own eyes. Never ever had I seen in a wolf such a beautiful beast. I felt safe. More than that, I felt saved. The angelic wolf had stayed. She had protected my life with only her presence. Her blue eyes were softly speaking to me, and without a word she said, "Follow me, follow me, follow the wolf, follow the wolf." Before I knew it, I had kicked the sides of my horse to move toward the wolf, and my horse did not hesitate. We rode behind the large animal, her white coat glittering in the dying moonlight. We rode behind the wolf up the wooded mountainside, along an old, almost faded path. Overgrown grass, but it obviously cut through the trees, up, and up the side of the mountain. We didn't have to run anymore. We were safe with her. As the top of the mountain came into view, and the violet light of the morning began to sear the horizon, killing the light of the moon, the wolf stopped. We stood for a moment, just two silhouettes, in a landscape never to forget, man astride horse, and wolf standing tall and confident. I breathed in a slow, peaceful breath. I turned my head to look down at the valley. Bathed in a soft violet and orange light, like dark decaying teeth, I saw the village beneath. A few indistant roads, all leading away from there, but nobody in the streets. If there were villagers, they were not awakening to the day with chores and things of everyday life. I doubted anyone lived in such a cursed place. I turned back to the wolf who led me up this mountain. The wolf had turned, facing higher ground, and there it was, the house of God. In awe, I looked as if time had stopped. I had never seen a church like this before. It had remnants of white paint on its facade. Broken windows, bits of stained glass remained in the frames. Crows flew in and out of the steeple, calling out in the early morning, warning of approaching intruders. Green ivy completely smothered the edges of the building, and bits of the walls were missing so that the inside of the entry was visible outside. Strips of faded red velvet wallpaper flapped in the soft breeze from the inside of the vestibule. "This place is terrible," was inscribed in bright yet chipped red paint above the warped doorframe. Again I was reminded of dark, decaying teeth as I saw the church within. A few distant thoughts inviting me in to sin. Nobody in the church. Decay, shrouded in a gloomy light, as if this was my final night. I wondered if God was ever here, or did he turn away in fear? I eased myself from atop my horse. I walked up to the church steps. Gingerly I stepped up each one. They groaned under my weight, but held me up fine. I looked into the open doors, which had fallen to the sides from years of not being used. The middle of the floor of the sanctuary had caved into the ground, causing the pews to rest atop one another, falling into the pit created by the decaying floor. Only the edges that were supported by the outside of the building held up. The ground was visible, and various small creatures scattered as I approached. I could see the large white wolf had somehow made it across to the pulpit, and she was looking at me expectantly. I looked up at the ceiling through the floor, and there were rags that used to be banners, proclaiming faith and wholehearted belief in a faraway God. I hesitantly moved toward the door. Once inside, everything would change before my eyes. It was as if in a dream the scene had changed. The floor was whole again, and in fact was covered by a luxurious carpet. The pews were righted again. Lighted candles lit up the sanctuary along the windows. The banners above proclaimed, "Glory to the highest," and "He is risen." No more decay. I spun around to see the walls were whole. The sky was no longer visible through the ceiling, just windows that peered into the blessed morning. The calling of the crows disappeared, replaced by singing birds outside. Glorious beauty had taken its place. I turned back to the pulpit to look at my savior, the she-wolf, only to watch in horror as the wolf began its skin to shed. I quickly looked to my right and grabbed a silver crucifix, expecting evil to be next. My heart thumping in my ears, and my stomach turned. The form melted to the size of a human. The white fur fell from the body and disappeared into non-existence. As the form took a more familiar shape, I dropped the crucifix. The wolf was no more a beast. Instead, she was a lady only dreams can create. Long flowing hair, curves along the softest skin I had ever seen. Naked and utterly beautiful, I fell madly in love in an instant. I knelt next to her as she awakened to my presence. She sat up, and I placed my cloak over her shoulders. She looked into my eyes. I was enchanted. It was love at first sight. In true love, there is no wrong or right. Suddenly she grasped me by my shirt and pulled me to her. She kissed me, soft and warm. Nights of heavenly sin in the house of God. We made love in the holiest of places. All the passion, it made us crazy. I didn't care from where she came, just her name. Angel.
I'll love you forever. Never leave.
She and I made love many times between the two pulpits in the ornate sanctuary. Days and nights passed. I did not want food nor drink when I was with her. I simply needed her to be near. And somewhere in between loving, touching, feeling, I looked to the altar. There was a little black statue there, black stone carved into the shape of a little devil. Sharp and pointed horns reflected the soft lights of the candles.
Help me. Black Devil, help me, 'cause I don't know what's going on.
It was the early morning of the 7th day. I had been making love to Angel in every single way. I was lying exhausted. Angel had risen from her makeshift bed between the two pulpits. The sun was peeking through a window high above. I looked up to see her kiss the little devil on his head. She was standing stretching up to the statue. It was a little man with fingers spread like claws. I said to him in my mind,
Black Devil, if you could only speak, what do you see when you're looking at me?
I sat up slowly to rub my face. I looked around and suddenly realized the strangeness of the place. Why two pulpits in a place like this? One facing to the east, the other to the west. One of the gilded canopies have gargoyles in the sun, and on the other canopy I see demons having fun. I rubbed my face again.
Black devil always near.
I thought to myself.
Why don't you want me here?
I looked back up at the statue.
I can feel your hate in my soul. I wonder what it is you know.
Later on, outside, I could hear the wind start to pick up. The leaves were slowly falling from the trees. Black clouds had started to roll across the horizon. I don't know how long I had been in this house of God, but Angel and I had been playing many games with each other. This time we were playing in the confessional, and I was the priest, she the sinner. In the middle of making love, she looks into my eyes. Without smiling, she says,
Nothing, my love. Nothing is forever.
She sat up and left my embrace. We were naked inside the confessional. I sat up as well and tried to put my arm around her. She shrugged my embrace off of her. She turned to me and said,
So many things are wrong in here. So many times I've lived in fear.
She stood up and stepped out of the booth, grabbing a robe as she stepped out. I slipped the banner that we had been using as a cover around me and followed her. Angel sat at one of the pews and stared at the altar with the little onyx devil on it. I sat next to her as tears fell from her eyes.
A year ago, I signed a sacred pact. And if you love me, so will you.
I looked at her thoroughly confused.
A pact?
For 1 year, I am to protect this place. Every day and night, I live here, alone and lonely. There is no way out. If I leave this place, I become the wolf you saw when we first met. And if I do not find a person to take my place in that 1 year, I die.
And if I take your place?
I asked. She cried harder.
My darling, I cannot.
She wept on my shoulder.
If you take my place, I will forget you, this place, everything, and go on to live my life as it never happened.
I held her as she wept.
I cannot ask you to do this.
She cried. I wept with her.
When is your time up?
I asked. She took in a deep breath.
In 7 days.
No!
I cried. I fell to my knees before her and wept in her lap.
No, my love, I just found you.
She held my head and embraced me.
I know.
She cried.
If I sign it now, Angel, you will be free to go.
I can't ask that of you, my love.
You don't have to.
I said. I kissed her deeply. I stood up on my feet.
And now I'm signing it for you.
Lightning flashed inside and outside of the building. I opened my arms and accepted my fate, or my love. Suddenly, Angel began screaming at the top of her lungs. I opened my eyes to see her frantically scrambling to get out of the church. She screamed the whole way, never changing into a wolf, as she ran to my horse and jumped onto her back. She rode off as the door closed behind her. I stood naked and alone in the sanctuary. My tears fell like glittering waterfalls in the candlelight.
So many tears I have in my eyes, I have to look away.
I started to speak as I stood there in the silence of the room.
How can I say the word that should never be said? I lay my broken heart to rest, and so I set you free. I wish you only the best, even if it's not with me.
I looked up at the windows that shone the darkening sky with storms gathering.
Fly away, beautiful angel. Fly away to better things. Fly away. How do you describe a life in between life and death? As if it makes any sense at all. I was just a shadow. Watching statues watching me. They drive me insane. Or was it the loneliness that caused my sanity to slip? As I'm sitting through the night, I'm so cold and dark inside. Angel, your memory will haunt me till the day I die. No longer living, but I am still not dead. I'm somewhere in between. I am of the unseen. Oh, how love can make you blind. I see the sun is up again, another day of just the same. The wine is turning sour, I'm longing for my final hour. Never to be free, cursed for eternity. I'm hanging on to a memory, I'm hanging on to me. Be it God or Satan, whoever you are, you're hiding in the shadows. You cursed me with the devil's mark. I smashed the mirrors on the wall. I have to smash them all before they crush my soul. Oh God, I'm bleeding now. Oh God, I'm bleeding bad. Help me. I can't take this anymore.
Lying on the floor, divinely stuck in my lonely madness, I hear a sound. Movement behind me. I sat up. There, where the altar stood, a void was on the floor. An opening, a secret. I stood up and moved closer. Yes, it was stairs leading down into the darkness. I sucked in a deep breath, reinvigorated. I bound my wounds with whatever I could find. Was that? Yes, that was a bell from within the hole, and a voice. But there is only me. There is no one else. I smelled the distinct old smell from a crypt. I did not hesitate. I started down the stairs. Down into the dark I go, armed with just a candle and, God willing, my soul. Messages were written on the floor as I reached the bottom of the stairs. Rats bit at my feet, and I stomped on one, killing it. It was nearly impossible to see down there. I brushed through webs and spiders. I could feel a presence so very near. I pushed on. I wondered what could be so powerful beyond the dark. I pushed through human bones in little chambers all along the narrow halls. Strangely, I saw a light. I came upon another chamber with a glow. In front of me was the statue of the Virgin Mary standing tall, a full-size figure carved in wood up against the wall. Her face peeled from all the years gone by, but it looked less like a statue as I peered into her face. I placed my hand on her cheek, and it began to crumble. I pushed a little harder, and it broke away, revealing a mummy's wrapping, and gently, that began to fall away from the skull, revealing the crown of thorns and a beard that had not yet fallen away. I screamed in fright. I screamed in madness.
Jesus Christ! What have they done to you?
The tears fell without me realizing that I was crying. I ran for my life back out of the catacombs, through the darkness, toward those bloody steps that led to things unimaginable.
Satan! God! Help me! Anyone help me!
Cold winds from far beyond the dark chased through the catacomb and breathed like icicles down my neck. My thoughts were frantic as I fought to escape. I clawed my way up the steps, ignoring the rats and spiders. I fell to my knees on the altar, hyperventilating in the dark. Night had fallen. Just when I felt safe, through the hole in the floor, I heard the winds from the catacomb. It came out of a hole, a magnificent light, grotesquely contorted faces. It filled the whole sanctuary, blinding everything. A powerful entity floating high above, and I could gaze upon it with wonder. I felt no pain. I no longer bled. I was no more scared of dying, but I was terrified of knowing the truth. I didn't want to, but I had to. I had to know who they were. I looked into the center of the light and felt the words before they came. They were the loudest thing that I had ever heard, but at the same time the softest whisper. I was transfixed.
You have entered where no human must go. You have seen the lie about the cross.
I gasped. I could not believe my ears, but it had to be true. I listened more intently.
Upon the cross he did not die. They tortured him, but he survived. Smuggled across the open sea to southern France, tranquility. There he married Magdalene and founded another dynasty. A church was built upon a hill to serve all of the gods at will.
I suddenly could not breathe at all. Surely these were lies from hell, straight from the mouth of the great liar himself. But would he have the power to make such a display at all? My curious primate brain could not ignore my senses, so I listened on as it continued.
I am many. We are one, the highest. You'll never know why we kept him here. The one who did not die on the cross. Could it be we kept him away from God so that he may never walk the earth again?
It lowered itself closer to me, as if it was peering into my face. I shrinked back in fear.
Or could it be that we've kept him safe from you, so you may never try to do again what you did back then? I guess it all depends on who you really are.
It rose again to the highest place of the room, nearest to the windows above. The light completely pushed back the darkness outside. The voices continued.
God and Satan are just puppets on our strings, creating conflicts in your little human minds, keeping us alive. It doesn't matter who or what you think we are. It only matters that you know that we are. God, the devil, good and evil. We're all that and so much more.
With that said, the light grew even brighter.
Live this life the best you can and leave the rest to us.
With that last statement, I was filled with rage. I spat back at the entity.
But I can't! I won't be the one who feeds an unknown god. Show to mankind that you really exist.
I was breathing heavily as the room began to swirl with unnatural winds.
And then explain to us the meaning of chaos. Give us reason to persist, to go on living through this hell on earth. All I want is peace of mind from all you non-existing gods. I bet that not even you will ever understand the truth. You are nothing but a puppet on even higher strings.
With that, lightning crashed across the top of the ceiling. I didn't care. I just continued on.
Ugh, your unholy eyes. I want to sew them shut. Oh, you meaningless little god. And so, I choose death over you.
Across the room was the stairs to the top of the steeple. I ran across the cacophony the being was making because of my insolence. I bounded up the stone steps to the top.
With a rope in my hand,
I said as I threw it over a beam next to the bells.
I'm searching for the unknown land.
I slipped a noose around my neck. I lifted my hands as I peered down through the hole beneath the bells. I cried into the night.
Father of the universe, here I come! This place is terrible!
And with that, I leapt into the void. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you click the like button. If you really enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell for future alerts. Take care, and I'll see y'all real soon.